It's official. Image Comics are the very first unionized comic book publisher in North America. This comes on the heels of a couple of months of public posturing, both by Image Comics themselves, employees that wanted to be unionized, as well as a lot of supporters within the comic book industry. 9 Image Comics employees voted 7-2 in favor of unionizing with Comic Book Workers United and the Communications Workers of America, thus sealing the deal in having a unionized workplace. One of the interesting aspects about this, normally the main reason workers unionize is so they can actually, pool their resources and leverage the employer to, negotiate better work conditions, better pay, better benefits, and things of that nature. It's a really interesting question whether or not these Image Comics employees have any leverage whatsoever. Normally, you would be able to leverage a very large workforce. Let's say if you had in the thousands or tens of thousands, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of employees nationwide, and you could leverage the idea that if you did not negotiate in good faith, or if an employer wasn't willing to meet specific terms that were non-negotiable on the side of the employees themselves, that you just walk out. There could be a work stoppage. In a lot of cases, that many employees, that would absolutely be detrimental to an entire industry. In this case, we're talking about, I believe it's actually 12. There are only 9 recovered in the vote. There are 3, I guess, there's something going on there to where those votes have not officially been counted yet because there's been some type of dispute about the legality or something about them. But either way, even if those 3 voted against it, there would still be a supermajority. But 12 employees isn't a large workforce. You could replace 12 employees literally overnight if you needed to. Another thing that you could leverage against a large employer or a large industry with some type of union or even a smaller employer would be specialized, skill sets. Like maybe if there were certifications or specialized training that you had to do to be in the job, and if you just remove them, the company would just essentially be stagnant. They wouldn't be able to perform their functions anymore. That doesn't appear to be the case here either. They appear to be, for the most part, office workers, kind of like marketing, things of that nature, obviously probably some accounting, stuff like that. The real question is, what does this mean? I personally would be very surprised if this actually ends up having really any long-term, short-term changes that the customer and really even probably the creative teams even notice. I think this will be all in-house as far as maybe contract negotiation and stuff like that, because literally the leverage just isn't there. They would need to unionize with the Marvel workforce, the DC workforce, and perhaps a few other publishers to where you could cause some type of work shortage. If Image Comics, if these employees walked out of Image Comics, what that would really do Image would probably still be able to publish. And even if they couldn't in the short term, you still have DC, Marvel, Boom, Dark Horse. You have so many comic books that would be going out. Really, the buying audience really wouldn't notice. And the effects themselves would be quite negligible on the industry themselves. I don't think that there would even be a hiccup, be completely honest. And as far as specialized skills, you can get marketing people anywhere. The only thing here that feels like it might be specialized is maybe the people that format the images themselves for print, but there are certainly services that do that, and there are certainly freelancers that would be able to do that in a heartbeat that have published comic books before and had made files ready to print for a specific type of printers and whatnot. So it really feels like there's almost no leverage, at least at this point, as long as it's, contained to Image Comics themselves. Really what you have to think about, what is the purpose of all this? Is it really workspace conditions? Is it unfair pay? Is it benefits or whatnot? I think the real purpose is really stated out, after they announced initially that they wanted to unionize, and that was the plan. That you obviously have to publicly disclose that to request a vote, and that's all part of the formal process. But they laid out like the 8 or 9 things that they wanted, and of course tucked down neatly at the very end. I think is the one that spoke probably most clearly about the aim and the goal of what this union really is there for. And, I'll say it quite frankly, it's gatekeeping. And this is what it says, verbatim in what the now unionized workers were proposing and what they would like to get out of all this. And it said a collective voting option to immediately cancel publication of any title whose creator or creators have been found to engage in abuse, sexual assault, racism, and xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, ableism, etc. until such time as said creators have engaged in meaningful reparations toward affected persons. And I think most of us can acknowledge that a lot of that stuff, of course, you wouldn't want those type of people in your workforce and being associated with your company. You wouldn't want the rub from that onto you. Be like, oh, Image Comics supports Islamophobia. That would be terrible. But there are some pretty generic terms in here. Abuse. Well, that could be a lot of things. Racism. Back in the day, I thought I knew what racism was, but nowadays racism is anything that when you upset somebody and they don't know exactly what to say to you, they just say, well, that was racist. Well, I guess it was. So these are very general terms at this point, and they want to be able to, go through people's Twitter accounts, past publications, and say that you will no longer have the ability to publish independently through Image Comics, which is really strange when you think about what Image Comics was founded on, empowering creators to create the products that they wanted to, and really being compensated commensurate with the quality of the work and the amount of audience that person draws in. That's why That's why if you look into it, Image Comics is like a really odd structure in comparison to the entire comic book industry, at least in North America. It's very much creator focused. Like, one of the things that you notice about this union here is like there's no editorial services, because if you go and publish through Image Comics, you have to have your own editorial staff. You provide your own oversight. They help you with getting the book published. They take a cut. There's an agreement there. And eventually you make money as long as the sales are there. But what the union is proposing, where they could actually do a vote and just deny people the opportunity to publish, really does fly in the face of the Image Comics creators, why it was created in the first place, and really what it stood for all these years, 30 years now. And we're seeing an enormous move towards this. We're seeing it in crowdfunding. There's definitely a move for gatekeeping there. We saw unionization, I believe, over at Kickstarter. And it really does fall in line kind of with the cancel culture thing that we're seeing really across Western culture specifically. And this kind of falls in line with that. So it's no surprise that they went along with this. And this is exactly what they're demanding. And I think, if you pull back the veil and you really look at what they're trying to get here, these aren't really like dangerous job positions. These are cushy office jobs. And I would be surprised if a lot of these people aren't working from home still, because of all the things that are happening, that they want the ability to deny people access to actually publish their comic books. It's about gatekeeping. It's about control. It's about cancel culture and being able to do that. Now, we know that not all of the Image Comics executives, many of whom are actually the original, Image 7 that came out and created Image in the first place. Obviously, there's some notable new additions. Robert Kirkman, Eric Stevenson, I believe, is also an executive now. He's been their publisher for a long time. But they were not exactly going along with it. And initially, when Image Comics was talking about the move to unionize their very limited, very narrowly focused, not highly skilled workforce, they weren't acknowledging it. They were like, yeah, okay, we'll see what happens. And that's kind of what they're still saying. Because I think they know in the back of their minds, if push comes to shove, they can literally just replace them all quite easily. What is interesting is we know that one of the original creators, Jim Valentino, he's got his Shadowline imprint, and there's a series coming out right now called Hellcop. I've read it myself. It's not too bad. But in the last issue that came out, they actually removed all the names of the people that were requesting this vote to unionize the workforce there. So that certainly gives you an insight at least to what one of the Image founders and executives there thinks about this idea. I wouldn't be surprised if a vast majority, if not all of the executives feel this way, that this is a move to gatekeep and take control of the company away from the people that actually created it and put their blood, sweat, and tears into making Image Comics a destination point for a lot of creators. We know that Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips are exclusive to Image Comics, with all the stuff that they're doing in their criminal universe. Now you got your Reckless universe. We just had word out that Jeff Lemire is now Image Comics exclusive. They really weren't doing this before. Jeff Lemire is an enormous get. He's one of the most talented writers within the entire comic book industry right now. A lot of the projects that he's working on in comics are being adapted into other mediums, specifically streaming right now a lot. And he has a lot of really successful independent comic books, not only through Image, but Dark Horse and other publishers out there. And he's bringing all of his wares over to Image Comics. Although I thought he had something to do with Substack. But as far as, publishing in print. It's going to be with Image Comics. And I can't imagine the leadership at Image Comics would like to give the ability or the authority to this small group of employees that have nothing to do with creative, which is literally the driving force of Image Comics on who they're allowed to bring in and who they're not allowed to bring in. So I do not see them going along with this willingly. I don't see them doing a public outcry or really just talking smack in public, but I would be very surprised if they aren't doing things, behind the scenes to fight this and prepare themselves for potentially just expelling all these employees and replacing the workplace. And like I said, they're really not specifically skilled. Sure, there is a marketing strategy for comic books, but I don't know, when you think about Image Comics marketing, you're like, wow, those guys are really innovative. I can't believe they're doing all these things to bring in new eyes to Image Comics. It's like, now they're doing the same thing that the marketing people at Marvel and DC and Boom and everyone else are doing. They send out a press clip to Newsarama and CBR, and they send out some tweets. It's not exactly a high-scale, big marketing effort going on through Image Comics. The reason that we know that Jim Valentino did that, like had those names removed, like per his request, being one of the original Image Comics founders, is that former Image Comics production sales and marketing production designer Sasha Ehead went out and tweeted when it happened that apparently Jim Valentino specifically removed the unionizing members of the Image Comics staff from the Shadowline book Hellcop office credits. And they had a lot of other things to say about how it was cruel and unusual and whatnot. Just working in Image Comics, I don't think warrants like you getting a personal credit within the comic book unless you're on the creative staff. I thought it was pretty far-fetched, some of the implications that they were trying to say that maybe Jim Valentino wasn't a very nice guy. I think he was doing the right thing and protecting his interest as far as the company goes. I imagine there are a lot of people out there that disagree with me, but as far as I'm concerned, those are the details. They voted. They are unionized. We know why they want to do it. It's for gatekeeping purposes. They want to have the ability to deny people the opportunity to publish comics through Image without their permission. If they don't like you, you don't get to do it. But I really don't think they have leverage. They don't have a big enough workforce. It's not a specialized skill, and they're all essentially very easily replaced. If they go out there and they try to stop somebody from publishing, using this list of grievances that they want to be able to go into, which some of them are very general, abuse, sexual assault, I said the list earlier, you're just going to see the people removed. And I will be surprised if this union lasts all that much longer. If it is going to last, they're going to need to reach out to the employees at Marvel, where you have a wider scope of skill sets that are more specialized, that could really have an impact on the production of the comic books. Marvel and DC, specifically like your editorial staffs that have a lot more day-to-day influence on the books themselves. None of these people have any creative influence on the books. It's only like marketing, maybe book managing, janitorial services, stuff like that. If they want this thing to last and get bigger, they need to reach out to Marvel and DC, really, and that's the way you would be able to grow this thing and perhaps make it a permanent part of the comic industry landscape. Otherwise, I do see them being kind of removed as soon as they try to flex their muscle and show Image Comics and the founders and the executives that they have some type of leverage within their relationship at the moment, because they really don't. If you think about it, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It feels like virtue signaling with a little sprinkle of gatekeeping on top, or at least the hopes of it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.